Recording in progress.
Okay, I am calling this regular meeting of council to order. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on a traditional and ceded territory of the Nawas First Nation. First item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. I'll just simply make the motion that the October 3rd, 2022 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Savage. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I will move to call into question. All those in favor and opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. All right, at this point, we'll skip down to item 7 of our agenda, so the consent agenda. Someone prepared to make that motion? Go ahead, Councillor Gusselbach.
That the recommendations listed for items 7A to 7B in the consent agenda be approved.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that? Seconded by Mayor Swain. I'll just call the question. All those in.
Sorry, it's a point of order, please.
What's your point of order?
Could I have 7A removed, please?
You may. So we'll just go back to the mover and seconder. Actually, we'll just do it by unanimous consent of council. That will just deal with item 7B is the consent agenda. Is anybody opposed to that? Okay, hearing or seeing nobody, we'll just deal with that. So call the question on the consent agenda, which is now just one item. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Okay, so through to Councillor Savage, if you want to make the motion.
Yes, for 7B, I'll be declaring conflict of interest due to the proximity of my property to the item. Thank you.
Sorry, 7B?
Yeah. 7A.
7A, okay. All right. All right, so I'll just simply make the motion then that the District of Lantzville Phase 3 Sanitary Sewer Collection System Local Area Service Establishment Bylaw number 143/2017 Amendment Enlarged Boundary Bylaw number 320/2022 be adopted. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Gusselbach. Call the question. All those in favor and opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, someone can get Councillor Savage back. That'd be appreciated. Thank you. That was a short trip. All right, so move on to item 8. So we have the public input period. So persons recognized by the chair must first state their name and address for the record, may speak once for up to 2 minutes unless council resolves otherwise, and are limited to providing comment regarding items listed on the agenda for the council agenda for this evening, excluding public hearing topics. Comments must be directed to the chair and are not to be directed to individual council members, staff, or the audience, and must not include personnel issues. So is there any member of the gallery that wishes to speak this evening? Okay, go to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please. And we still have nobody remotely. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joan Jones, 7255 Ellesmere Drive. Thank you, Your Worship, for this opportunity to speak. It's difficult to come up here and say the things that I have to say right now. They are in reference to the Clark Med development.
Okay, so to the speaker, that is a public hearing item that has closed and there are no comments warranted on, or that would be permitted, sorry.
May I please pose a question? There is no public hearing. There is no public hearing on the agenda for this.
There's no public hearing for this particular item. It is on our agenda as presented for this evening.
Right, so I'm just speaking in public input. There's no public hearing, so.
Well, you're not to speak at all to this particular item.
How is council to hear the concerns of residents?
The public hearing has closed and council cannot consider any further information. That is how.
May I ask, how is a resident to speak to the new information you're receiving tonight?
What I'd recommend to that question is submit it to the district.
We've been told they won't take any questions.
Okay, I will deal.
As a point of order, please.
What's your point of order, Councillor
Yeah,
Saab?
maybe I best do this formally. May I please request a ruling on this because with public input, in my opinion, it would be allowed because we're going right back to a new second reading.
So, Councillor Savage, your point of order is noted, and I believe I've
But
already ruled on it, and there is to be no public input included in this evening's agenda, or this evening's meeting, pardon me, with respect to that particular item. The
Yeah,
public
could I-
hearing is closed. If it continues, then the speaker is out of order.
I understand. Then we will rely on council for having thoroughly read the agenda, and then I won't
Thank you for your
need to say.
comments.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor Swain, I apologize. When I meant ruling, I was just asking if we could get a legislative decision on that through our corporate director. And I just wanted to finish my point, please, that with...
Well, so this is probably also out of order at this point.
Okay.
Councillor Savage, and we'll wait until we get to that particular agenda item. We're currently on public input period, and that is
Yep.
that. So if you wish to speak, name and address for the record, please.
Brian Blood, 7075 Colette Road. A lot of things are out of order. Your Worship, I think you'd agree with me that during the 11th hour before a change in council makeup due to elections, it is customary in British Columbia, and indeed in any jurisdiction that values democratic process, that items that represent major changes be left to the new council, which will more accurately reflect the current will of the people. There is only one reason to disrespect this custom, and it is a bad one. And that also disrespects resident voters. We expect this administration to keep the utilities running until November, and that is all.
Any additional speakers? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I will move on in our agenda. So that takes us on to item 9A. So we have the development permit and development variance permit application for 6852 Mart Road. Is someone prepared to make this motion? Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, that development permit, number DP 2214 for 6852 Mart Road be issued, and further that development variance permit number DVP 22.22-5 for 6852 Mart Road be issued.
Yeah, and we have that second by Councillor Gusselbrecht. Discussion, so through to the mover and then to the seconder.
Yes, thank you. This is the best news one can receive from our industrial park, that a business is doing so well it wants to expand. This business appears to be busy all the time when I've been up there, which shows it has a good reputation and customers must be pleased. My only regret is businesses pay a much higher tax rate based, of course, on tax assessed value. I've asked the BC assessment how this all came about, and it's fairly nebulous how it all came about. So at any rate, the downside to this is with all this improved building, the tax assessed value will go up, so their reward for investing in this will be to pay higher taxes. So I just thought I'd mention that, and hopefully in the future we can come up with some idea where maybe there's a 5-year grace period for investments like this. And I just had a question for staff, please. I'm hoping this business does not have to provide landscaping. Do they? I couldn't tell from the report, because there's old reports from 2 previous historical times and then the one today.
Okay, and we have Ms. Massey, sorry, on
Moss.
Moss, sorry, and she'll answer your question. So go ahead.
Your worship, through the council, there is a requirement for landscaping. They're proposing to have a row of cedar hedges on the north side of the front parcel line, just to screen the parking area from the street.
Okay, and that's the only requirement? Those are 4 planters, 4 or 5 planters?
Yeah, that was the requirement.
Okay, and does the applicant have to give a $9,000 deposit for that? And do you have a rough estimate of what that will cost?
We don't have the deposit information set at this time. If a deposit is required, it will be given back to them afterwards.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to make an amendment to this motion, where by the words at the end of the motion, the following words are added, and that no landscaping requirements be issued.
And do we have a seconder for the amendment? Okay, I will second the amendment. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. The location of this property is right back by the tree line, well back from the highway. You can't see it from the highway. So there's already, a lot of trees there buffering potential houses to the south from this. And I have personal experience with this where my father-in-law, because he built a retaining wall, had to put in a landscaping, and it ended up costing him $14,000. It was an extremely frustrating experience, and it serves no purpose whatsoever, even to this day. So that's why, and I feel it's up to owners that aren't viewed from the highway, that it's the pride of their company. My father-in-law had all sorts of landscaping at his place out of pride of his company. So if you have a business that wants to do that, it should really be up to them. It's not up to us to tell them how their property should look. This is a place of work. And I know when you're dealing in automotive or trucking businesses, it's immensely hard work. And I think it's enough that they're building all this new buildings coming in. They work so hard keeping their business going. I just don't want a frustrating irritant added to this that will serve no purpose whatsoever. And I don't want to see any space taken up by landscaping in this location, because every square inch is needed if there more parking is needed or more expansion in the future. So that's my point. Thank you.
Okay, as a seconder, I'll forgo my turn at this point. Councillor Gusbrook, did you have a comment? Oh, I thought I saw your hand go up.
After you're done.
No, go ahead. I'm satisfied with what I've heard so far, so go ahead.
Well, I'm a bit astounded. This is the first time I've heard Councillor Savage said he didn't want trees and landscaping. So I don't know if this is an earth change in his attitude, but on a more serious note, and through to staff, is this requirement for everybody that's in the industrial park, the landscaping on the railway side?
Your worship, through the council, it is required as part of the development permit area number 9, just have screening to separate parking lot areas from the street.
Yeah. I think security is probably the biggest concern for this business, and I know they are busy, and I'm very glad to hear that they are expanding. Leylandi cypress at Superstore, $25 a bush. It's not a big cost. I'm sure in terms of security, they're going to be putting a fence because there's a lot of critters running up and down the railway tracks nowadays. So I'm sure with that fence and barbed wire, a few Leylandi cypress or western red cedar thrown in there will meet the requirements. I don't think that's a big ticket item for these folks, and I'll reserve my comments for the main motion.
Okay, any additional debate on the amendment motion? Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, you bring up a good point, Councillor Gesperbeck, with security. And it's very important for patrol cars to be able to see in the property to see if there's something going on. The location of these bushes in pots, and the pots can be very expensive, these big cement round pots, is to screen it from the road. So you want visibility from the road to see if there's anything, not correct going on there. And in terms of Leylandia cypress, those grow to 50 feet tall. I don't think you want those in there. So anyway, that's yet another point that's been brought up. You want it as open as possible in the industrial park. And yes, I do agree with perhaps some of the frontage properties with some landscaping for appearance when you go by, but I still don't want them blocked to be able to advertise and so on. But it should be on a case-by-case basis. And in this case, there's zero need for it. If the owner feels there's a need for it, leave it up to him. He's just as responsible as any of us. And it's his business, so that's my opinion. So I would urge you not to have this done. And also, it's a little more than you think. There has to be proper soil put in. So you're running around getting approved soil, et cetera, et cetera. It's just an irritant. And he may prefer landscaping somewhere else, not in this spot. It's really up to him. Thank you.
I'll just speak real briefly to this. I can support the amendment. It makes sense. It really doesn't seem to be much need to put in shrubs along that length of the property. So it's, again, I can support this. It's pretty simple. So unless there's anything, Director Coates?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it would be, the whole purpose of the official community plan and the development permit areas is to set a standard for the community. And certainly staff would understand if council wanted to give some direction for staff to bring back a report to suggest a housekeeping amendment to the OCP to take out the landscaping requirements, but to change to a system where you're decisioning them one application at a time is not best practice. Best practice would be that people know from reading our OCP that there's a landscaping plan that's required. And so that's why staff have made that recommendation.
Councillor Savage?
Yes, forgive me, I found this a little bit rich. Our OCP is regularly burned up sections, so to now say it has to be perfectly consistent is not consistent what we've been doing for the past 4 years, and especially now holding it to the letter of the law in an OCP when it affects a hardworking business person is hardly the time to be suddenly insisting that every spec of the OCP must be respected. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on the amendment? Okay, I'm going to move to call in the question then. All those in favor and opposed? Voting at Councillor Wilson, Councillor Gesperbeck, and Councillor Proctor opposed. Amendment fails. Back to the main motion. Unless there's anything further, I'm going to call the question. So, Councillor Gesperbeck, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just going to follow up on what I've heard in support of this motion. I'm happy to see that the business is expanding. It is an automotive repair, amongst other things. We've talked about automotive repair in town with respect to our good neighbor bylaw. Well, here's a business that does pay the big taxes, and they are able to expand. So secondly, I think part of this may be due to the expansion of our sewer system, Phase 3 sewer system, to the industrial park. And once again, I'll echo, this appears to be a harbinger of good things. And with other businesses there who could subdivide their property and build, this is something Lantzville needs right away. So we only have 3% of the tax base in Lantzville is from industrial or commercial. That means 97% is from the residential taxpayers, where most other municipalities, it's 20 to 25% are industrial and commercial. So good on you and good luck.
All right, any additional closing comments? Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I agree with that, and I also wish the business all the luck with the new building. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything further, I'm going to call the question. Okay, hearing and seeing nothing, all those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to the next item. So we have bylaw number 282. Is someone prepared to make the first motion? Go ahead, Councillor Gusbrack.
Thank you. That the motion on the floor for third reading of District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, Clark Med, bylaw number 282, 2022 be withdrawn.
And is there a seconder to this item? So second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gusbrack.
Thank you. We had our public hearing last Wednesday. We heard the concerns of the public, both for and against. There were some 21 letters in favor of this proposal and only 11 against. And of those 11 against, only 7 people lived in the area that their property might be affected. So we heard staff's response to some of those concerns. In my opinion, most of the concerns were housekeeping, that there was typographical errors, that the reference wasn't quite correct. And really, in my mind, the only substantive issue was Article 21. And what I heard from staff was that it was the developer who's taking the big risk on that. And secondly, that with the LCA judicial review coming up in November the 1st, we're going to find out real quick how that goes. So I would like to move ahead and to deal with this and that the second reading be withdrawn, and we'll deal with the further motions after we see what happens there. Thank you.
Okay, and through the seconder, Councillor Proctor, if you wish. Okay, and through to the rest of the council. Okay, at this point, I'll move to call in question then. All those in favor and opposed, that's, I think, carried unanimously. Okay, and that takes us on that. Well, I guess it is carried unanimously. Nobody's objecting. So we'll move on to the next motion. So go ahead, Councillor Gusbrack.
Thank you. That second reading of the District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, Clark Med, bylaw number 282, 2022, given on September the 7th, 2022, be rescinded.
I believe we can take them together.
Yeah. And further, that the District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, Clark Med bylaw number 282, 2022, be given second reading as amended.
And do we have a seconder to this one? Seconded by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on what would be second reading, really. So through to council, or Councillor Gusbrack, go ahead.
Thank you. This subdivision was approved back in September of 2020, almost 2 years ago. What is before us tonight, again, is simply the phase development agreement, which talks about how the already approved subdivision will proceed. And that is a normal thing in larger developments for a phase development agreement. It gives both the district as well as the developer security of knowledge that it won't be changed in midstream, subject to what's in the agreement. And there's a 10-year cap on that. So this is something for both the developer and the district, and I can support it. Thank you.
And through to the seconder, Councillor Proctor, if you wish.
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, and then through the rest of council. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, there's two things here. One is process, the second is content. And for me, it's unacceptable having such a big, contentious item 17 days before an election. Other municipalities like Langford cease having big decisions several months before an election. And for me, it's unacceptable to have second and third reading, then adoption all in one night with no public hearing and no public input, because we're now basically on a brand new DPA. That public hearing, in my opinion, doesn't apply to this one anymore at all because we're now at second reading. So this is before a public hearing, not after it. So, and my problem is as well, since September 7th, this has all been confusing for me. And I go through things carefully. I'm used to reading contracts for decades, but I'm just so confused by all this. There's different iterations of PDAs with ever-changing information and ever-changing content. There was a covenant in the first iteration that was related. Perhaps it was the current covenant. There was a large body of content in the second one. And the problem I have when I get the original PDA, I mark it up. And that's the one I use for reference. When it's changed from September 7th to September 28th, there's zero reason for me to read the September 28th version. I've already read carefully everything in the September 7th. And when I hear that day, just before the meeting and during the meeting, all these changes that are necessary because of the mistakes, that's a good thing, but now this latest iteration is very lengthy, and I didn't get a paper copy until today because it wasn't available. We got this agenda late Thursday afternoon where it was impossible to get a paper copy. Well, I can't compare I can't compare copies on a computer scrolling up and down dozens or hundreds of pages. I need paper copies, and I am in this difficult position. I hate coming to council meetings without having the full authority of knowledge of what I'm doing. And there's some very interesting things in here that I would like to thoroughly go over to see how the sewer diagram may have changed, water requirements, all that stuff is of high interest to me. And I want to be sure that when I pass this, that I know what I'm passing, and we're stuck with it for 10 years. And I'm used to doing that. If I don't know what I'm thoroughly passing, I won't. And I'm not sure all the changes that were suggested to be made have been made. So I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here. And if I haven't thoroughly read it, I doubt most people have. So I would like the time for the public again. Congratulations to them for finding out so many things that needed changing. And I'd like for them to have the same opportunity. So that's the first thing about process. I won't be supporting this on process alone. And on the content of it, you can't help but separate the content of the phase development agreement from the site plans that are contained in it. And I'm still not sure, I haven't had a time to check the unit numbers to see if they correspond with the DCCs. Well, the DCCs may be correct, maybe the unit numbers are not. And I just want to make sure everything is absolutely set for what it's supposed to be before we move ahead. And in terms of the site plan, so I am happy that, first of all, Wood Acres, Clark Drive, and Blackjack areas, they get the water first, right in the first phase. That's a good thing about the phasing. But this could have also happened. They would have also been required to have done this with a lower density. So now something else has come up that really disturbs me, and that is something recent, and that is the site plan shows this failed formula of small lots which are going to allow big houses. Well, we've heard from David Eby with his new plan for changing the provincial building bylaw that secondary suites will be allowed in every single house. So now...
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
I feel like that the dialogue is going down the road of, we're talking about the zoning, and this is a phased development agreement, talking about size of the buildings and numbers. That's just what I'm hearing.
So through to Councillor Savage, it is important to try and stay on the topic of the phased development agreement, which has, so if you want to speak to the process, that's, I think is fair. If you want to speak to the phasing of the development, that's fair as well. But in terms of getting too far into the details of the actual development, that's probably off base.
Yes, if I may explain, please, Mayor Swain.
If you can keep brief, because you're also at your end of your speech.
Yeah, I referred carefully each time to the site plan. The site plan is part of the phased development agreement. The sewer phasing is part of that. The water phasing is part of that. In terms of the content of the phased development plan, I can speak to density, I can speak to the site plan layout, the sewer, the water, all of this is contained in the phased development agreement. And also, I would refer you back to Village South when we were told such things could be in the phased development agreement, and we could make changes then. So they are in here. So what I'm referring to is the site plan, which shows the lot sizes. Those lot sizes are very small.
Councillor Savage, I'm going to interrupt because you have exceeded your 5 minutes speaking time first time. Additional speakers. So Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Just in hearing the residents and going home and digesting this a bit more, a lot of things that were, in my opinion, brought up, just evident that this is not a zoning or land use discussion. It's a phased development agreement bylaw, and it's about the amenities and the timing of the amenities. After review, the only thing that was really missing and is now included was the PSRs, the preliminary subdivision review, which we actually did have in our public hearing agenda. Those letters had already been issued on July 6, 2022. I was also concerned as well regarding the 280 versus 250 that was brought up. That was a typo outlined in the background section of the September 7th, 2022 staff report. Sorry. The zoning states a maximum of 250 units, and that has not changed. With respect to clause 2101 as well, hearing the residents, I was concerned as well, but upon looking at it even closer, the clause is a simple and fair clause. If for whatever reason the development cannot proceed, the developer would get back in return the following amenities that they have to give up initially at the very beginning: 5 acres, 50K, and reservoir land. This does not mean that if the developer builds roads or pipe that the district will be on the hook for paying the bill, as this infrastructure does not become property of the district until the subdivision gets its final approval. So just after digesting and looking at this, I'm excited to see finally that water will be taken to the residents. That's one of the first things that will happen, and I will be supporting this bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Gaspar, go ahead.
Thank you. I think the main thing to realize is that this subdivision and phase development agreement is in total conjunction with this council's strategic priority plan, which was set out when we were first elected, and that was to getting water and sewer to this community. That imperative is in our OCP as well. That conclusion was in the water survey of 2018 or 2017. People want water and sewer made available throughout this community. And I heard one comment during the during the public hearing is that it's a right. Water's a right. There's so many places in the world that don't have that. There's malnutrition, there's death. They don't have clean water. We have it. We have great supplies of it. It's getting it distributed. And that's what this plan does. Some 200 different residences are within this area. We're talking Clark, Blackjack, Alger, Wood Acres, Arbutus Crescent. They are all within the area that once the infrastructure is put in, they can then decide if their particular community wants to hook up. But if we don't go ahead with this, and if the developer doesn't go ahead, that option is not in front of it. Just a couple points that Councillor Savage brought up about process and a near election, and I've heard that a couple of times. It's interesting because I was at the RDN board meeting last week, and this issue came up, and what was before us was a massive study on parks and trails, some 300 pages that staff and consultants and subcommittees and committees of the RDN had worked on for some 2 years. And when somebody brought that up, well, you know, there's an election coming up and we can't, it was almost unanimous by the other directors who are mayors and electoral area directors saying, no, no, no. This has been going on, this study, we work up until midnight, November the 1st. And that's and that's the way I think as well. This particular project was approved back in September of 2020. We're 2 years down the road. It's not some flash in the pan, last minute council ramming something through. It's been an orderly progression, and this is the last step. Councillor Wilson mentioned the PSR. That had the 250 units mentioned in it. I think people have read this document very carefully because what I heard last meeting was people, certain persons had noted the typographical errors. They pointed out where there might have been an error. They've read it very carefully to pick those contextual problems out, and I thank them. That's what an informed electorate does. They read the documents. So I think we're backed up from the public on that, the covenant. Yes, it was part of the original staff report because the covenant was registered against the property. The PDA is a departure from that. We are supplementing the 219 covenant with this new agreement between staff between the district and the developer to supplement and augment that so that we're all certain. So yes, I can support it.
Okay, for additional speakers, I'll speak next, and then we can open it up for more discussion. In terms of the phasing, I have no issue with how the phasing is laid out in the report. In terms of process, that's where I get a little hung up, and it's not a total hang up. My biggest concern was we go from September 7th, where we had the phase development agreement or form of the phase development agreement, and then second reading was passed, and we moved into the public hearing process and so on, and then we had a change of report that went to the public hearing, and that's where I get hung up. It was a change of report or a change of PDA, and in terms of process, we have in our report our agenda this evening. Some information on page 67. It has to do with how the matter was discussed with the district solicitor. And there's been some recommendations. So in our report this evening, it's the recommendations are listed there. And part of that also says a new public hearing is not required as the full documents were available to council and the public at the September 28th, 2022 public hearing. Again, the hang up I have is And if the district solicitor is fine with it, that the change of PDA from September 7th to 28th, that's acceptable, then I have to accept that. But again, that's the hang up I have. It's just in terms of process and changing of reports from one meeting to the next. So I'll leave my remarks there, and then we'll open up for more discussion. Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, I hope I get some time added, please, since the point of order ate up my speaking time. Thank you. And anyway, because of all these references to services are directly related to the site plan, how many units are shown in the site plan. So, and there's so many different ways this phase development agreement is directly connected to David Eby's proposal to allow suites, which supersedes our regulations to have suites in every house. Will there be more of a strain on the water? Of course there will be if every single house has a suite. Will there be a different economic picture with this development? Of course there will be. We went through this before. You've got a tiny increase, if any, in tax assessed value if there's a suite in every house, but you've got all these new 200 families, tenants, however many there are, using Lantzville services. It changes the complexion of the whole thing. And the way around that, I've already brought this up before, which was in order, and that is the size of the houses on the site plan. If you can get them small so they can't accommodate a suite, it does two things. It attracts a different demographic, seniors and young people, and it makes it more in scale. Without that, if you're going to have big houses allowed on the site plan, it's going to be a failure just like it is elsewhere. And then you add suites in every single house. That's not what we discussed on Clark Med, and it will happen if Eby's proposal goes through and he'll be premier. So at any rate, I'm also do not agree within this PDA is a prescription, the words are right in it, for a chain link fence along separating the environmentally sensitive area, which is all of Bloods Creek Gully, and the path in the site plan of this PDA shows you go right beside the backyard fences of the new houses. So what kind of a nature area is that? You're stuck against a fence on one side and then a chain link fence, so you can't even enjoy the beauty of the gully. So again, that's something I've already brought up, so that's another reason I'm not going to approve this, is because that has to be changed, and it's not. We're stuck with this for 10 years. We should be going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm still not satisfied that all the appropriate changes have been made, but I will be going through it in the next couple of weeks to see really what's in there, what has and has not been.
Okay, Councillor Savage, I'm going to stop you there. That's been at least over 3 minutes. Through to additional speakers. So through to staff, I'll simply ask the question. Was there an issue with the change in the PDA from September 7th to September 28th? Because the document to the PDA did change, because there are two PSRs were not included in the September 7th PDA, and going from there to which was approved as second reading to go to public hearing, and then all of a sudden for the public hearing we have on September 28th they appear in that document. As far as I'm concerned, the PDA is different. So is that not a substantial change to the document, or is it not viewed as a substantial change?
Point of privilege, I didn't hear that last. What was missing or what was put in?
There was two PSRs, one for the Med side and one for the Clark side of the development.
Sorry, I was just waiting for the CEO to jump in there. He was on the call with the lawyer. My understanding is that the PSR was there as a reference. That is something that was issued in July. So similar to the site plans where there's something there as a reference, it's not intrinsic to the document. So it's,
Just as a point of clarification, not to interrupt, but I don't believe there was any PSRs listed. There was, I think it was just appendix. I don't have it here with me, but it was just listed as an appendix and it was blank. So is that correct? It was left, there was nothing there, it was blank? So maybe CO Campbell, if you're on that. It just simply wasn't included in the September 7th. That was the
I don't remember.
PSRs.
Pardon me, Your Worship, I don't remember the conversation.
I think what I understood from them relaying to me the conversation, the important thing was that it was in the public hearing package and people commented on it. So everything that was in the public hearing package was commented on, so people had that information. And now you've taken it back to second reading, and so now you have a complete document.
Yeah, again, for me, this is it's about the process, and I sure hope there's no challenge to that down the road. Again, with the actual document itself, in terms of the phasing, again, I have no issue with that, and I'm satisfied with the changes that have been made, and thank goodness we have public hearings to identify errors and so forth, because you know, this is a legal document at the end of the day, and it's important to make sure that everything is as it should be, and I know we can't make sure everything is perfect within it, but we should be making our best attempt to do so. Unless there's any further comment, debate, I'm going to call the question. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. I've just got some more comments and a question to staff, please. And the other thing included in the covenant and PDA, in the PDA rather, is we're getting a public works storage area likely contained with another chain link fence on the 5-acre public area. So this PDA site plan shows our actual park area is nothing more than a 0.44 acre strip on the Med property, a walk with fences on either side along a flat area well back from the top of the Bloods Creek bank, where you can't even see the creek. And of course, we've got the little green strip shown in the phase development agreement that was originally 15-meter setback, reduced for no good reason whatsoever to 5-meter setback along a water course feeding Bloods Creek. So my point is that this PDA shows that the great parkland we were expecting is actually going to be very little usable park. So now my question, please, to staff is that there was pages that appeared to be identical in the agenda. I couldn't figure it out. We had pages 125 to 179, and then another section, page 69 to page 124, that appear to be identical documents for the most part. So what is the reason? Again, this takes time figuring this out. I had no idea why there was two documents the same within the same agenda.
Sorry, what was the second batch of members?
I'll give them in numerical order. The first batch was 69 to 124. Second was 125 to 179.
Point of privilege, could I ask Councillor Savage which agenda is he referring to? September 7th, September 28th?
Tonight's agenda.
Pardon?
Tonight's agenda, October the 2nd, 3rd. October 3rd.
I think if you go to page 65 of the report, it describes that attachment 1 is the phase development agreement bylaw number 282, 2022, which includes the phase development agreement as Appendix A. Pages 5 to 59 of the September 28th, 2022 public hearing agenda is attachment 2, and attachment 2 starts at page 125.
Yes, well, saw the dates. One date was September 7th. The other date had blanks to fill in, but there was no explanation what they were. They were simply two, the staff report never referred to, there was two clumps of pages, both of which appeared identical.
One is called attachment 1, and one is called attachment 2, if you go to the report.
Yes, well, that's fine, but I didn't see any reference to what they were.
It's on page 65. Do you want me to read it again?
Yes, please, if you could.
So attachment 1 is District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, brackets Clark Med, bracket, bylaw number 282, 2022, quote, which includes the phase development agreement as Appendix A. So that's what's in this agenda. That's the bylaw you just gave readings to. And then attachment 2 is pages 5 to 59 of the September 28th, 2022 public hearing agenda. So in case you wanted to compare what was in the public hearing agenda to what is the bylaw that you just gave readings to.
Yes, okay, well, thank you. That's yet another reason why one really needs the time for this. When I start today to go through this, it was impossible for me to figure out what was which. So my only point is that time is what gives you the things that you're able to do this. So I just wanted to make that point again. This is far too rushed for me in one day. It was dozens and dozens of pages, 100 and however many pages to go through. So I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
And it's unfortunate if I didn't make it clear at the meeting on Wednesday night. We did have a quick turnaround. We knew that. The agenda was going out Thursday. The office would be closed Friday, but staff were here with the doors shut, working. And if any member of council had contacted us, they could have stopped in here and picked up their packages.
All right, I'm going to move to call in questions. So again, this is the motion to rescind and then to do second reading as amended. Any questions before we call the question? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed, knowing that Councillor Savage is opposed, it carries. That takes us on to the next motion. Someone prepared to make that. Go ahead, Councillor Gaspar.
That the District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, Clark Med, bylaw number 282, 2022 be given third reading.
And do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on third reading. So to the mover and then to the seconder.
Thank you. I think I have nothing at this point.
Okay, and to Councillor Proctor, if you wish. Oh, okay, nothing. And then to the rest of the council. Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, just wanted to make the point. I totally disagree with introducing second reading, then third reading, then adoption, all in one night. And to end on a positive note, the one positive aspect of this is that water will be coming to Woodacres, Alger, Blackjack, Clark Drive areas, but we could have done it with a more acceptable content of development. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I'll move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, knowing that Councillor Savage is opposed, carries. And then we have the next one, if someone's prepared to make that motion. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
The District of Lantzville Phase Development Agreement, Clark Med, in brackets, bylaw number 282, 2022 be adopted.
And we have that seconded by Councillor Gusselbreck. Move to call in the question. All those in favor and opposed, knowing that Councillor Savage is opposed, carries. All right, that takes us into the next one. So bylaw number 313. Councillor Savage.
Point of order, I'll be declaring conflict due to my proximity of my property to this item. Thank you.
All right, just noting at 6:55, Councillor Savage is leaving the meeting. That's for the next two, yeah. All right, someone prepared to make the first motion? So it's item D, or sorry, C. So go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
The District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150, 2019, amendment in brackets 6671 and 6685/6685B Harwood Drive, bylaw number 313, 2022 be adopted.
Second by Councillor Gusselbreck. Call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. That takes us on to the next item. Someone prepared to make that motion. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
That District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020 amendment 66 in brackets 6671 and 6685/6685B Harwood Drive, bylaw number 314, 2022 be adopted.
And that's seconded by Councillor Gusselbreck. I'll move to calling the question. All those in favor? And that's again carried unanimously. Someone can get Councillor Savage back, please. All right, so just noting again, it's 6:57. Councillor Savage has returned to the meeting. We're on to bylaw number 322. Someone prepared to make that motion? Okay, I'll simply make it myself. That the District of Lantzville 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw number 289, 2021 Amendment Bylaw number 322, 2022 be given first, second, and third readings. Do we have a seconder? Second by Councillor Gusselbreck. Discussion. I'm good. Through to the seconder, if you wish. Councillor Gusselbreck.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, and through the rest of council. Okay, hearing or seeing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Or is that opposed? Okay, noting Councillor Savage is opposed, carries. That takes us on to item F, which is uncollected property taxes. I'll read the motion that council approves the write-off of the uncollectible property tax in the amount of $862.97 for the years of 2020 and through to 2022 on a manufactured home folio number 350.70160.120, formerly situated at 12-6820 Parklands Place, and further that council directs staff to apply to the minister under sections 781 of the Local Government Act to manage and dispose of said account receivable, and further that once ministerial approval is received, all outstanding amounts from other taxing authorities be deducted from their 2023 tax requisitions, and each of the taxing authorities be advised. So second by Councillor Gusselbreck. Any discussion on this particular motion? Go ahead, Councillor Gusselbreck.
I guess this is one instance when death taxes won't be collected.
All right, unless there's anything further, I'm going to call the question. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I was just going to say, Councillor Gusselbreck, I'm glad you didn't say it pays to die.
All right, a little bit of humor this evening. I'm going to move to call in a question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to item 12 of our agenda. So this is under new business, Mayor and Council verbal updates. So we'll start, Councillor Wilson.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Yes, thank you. I just want to reiterate again that I'm glad that we've passed the phase development agreement and that Clark Med subdivision will be going ahead, subject to the vagaries of our legal system. I think it's a real plus for the whole community, and I think this council can be proud of this accomplishment. It was the right thing to do, and we did it. Thank you.
Okay, through to Councillor Proctor.
I don't have a report, thank you.
And Councillor Savage.
Yes, and I would just like to summarize as well on Clark Med that I think it has the potential to be a nightmare. With this David Eby proposal now allowing suites, it's going to be right in the building bylaw that any house can have a suite. We're going to have to really rethink our lot sizes and houses, because if every single one can have a suite now, it changes the dynamic. So we do have in our current zoning bylaw a minimum lot size there has to be for suites, but now if there's no such minimum lot size, just simply suites allowed in any house, then what I'm saying is Clark Med can be an extremely overcrowded, big houses with suites in every house type of scenario, which was not the original plan. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up as well was the all candidates meeting we had yesterday at Costin Hall. Was extremely well run. It had a very nice spirit in the room and everyone spoke well. The people that attended, big turnout, were all very appreciative. So thank you to all those that organized it and did their public contribution as volunteers. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, for myself, just a couple brief, or at least one brief update. So I attended Aspen Grove this morning for the Tour de Rock presentation and arrival and so forth. It was an excellent event, and the school kids had raised $5,000 for Tour de Rock, or Cops for Cancer. So they made their presentation and is wonderfully accepted, and it was a really neat event to be a part of. So again, it's something that's happened in our community, and again, the students at Aspen Grove were quite proud to hand over the $5,000 check to the cause. So well done to them. Other than that, that's basically my update for this evening. So we'll move on to introduction and late items, if there's any late items. Okay, hearing or seeing none, moving on to notices of motion. Okay, no notices of motion. That takes us to the next part of our agenda. So we have public clarification. Persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, and the agenda item regarding which they're seeking clarification, excluding public hearing topics, and may speak once for up to 2 minutes to ask clarification questions. For example, how did the vote go? Any technicalities or request interpretation of abbreviations or jargon, etc. So is there any clarification from the gallery this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to a motion to close the meeting. So I'll just make the motion that the regular council meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A, C, and I of the community charter. Is there a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gesselbrecht. I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? That's carried unanimously. We are now closed. We'll just wait for the gallery to clear.